Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Got a Case of Wanderlust podcast, a show dedicated to all things travel. I'm your host, Lydia, and on this episode, you'll hear a conversation between me and another fellow traveler that will hopefully inspire you for your next travel adventure. If you enjoy listening, consider following the show and giving it a rating on Spotify, or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave a quick review. It would mean so much to me. All right, thank you so much for being here today. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Got a Case of Wanderlust podcast. I'm your host, Lydia, and today we have a super special guest. Her name is Lara, and Lara is a sustainable travel blogger of the sustainabletravelguide.com, where she posts a whole collection of helpful hacks for how to help the planet when we travel. So her Instagram is followed by the documentary The Last Tourist, which is a new film that's all about over-tourism and responsible travel that I highly recommend. It's obvious to see why they follow Lada's Instagram because she has such amazing tangible tips to be a better traveler, from transport to food and accommodations. Lada has plenty of amazing insight for us today, so let's welcome her to the show. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invite.
Yes, I'm so glad that we had time to record today. And first of all, I just want to praise you for your killer Instagram feed. Like, you've got it color coded, organized tips based on the topic, and just really actionable ways we could be more eco conscious travelers. So I know that's got to take a lot of work to curate. So kudos for you for putting out such meaningful content.
Oh, thanks so much. That's really nice to hear.
So what my first question is, what made you want to create your Instagram account at the Sustainable Travel Guide in the first place?
Um, I guess I noticed that a lot of people do care about sustainability, but the tourism industry is not at all tailored to it. So I think a lot of people would want to travel more sustainably, but they have no idea how. Because it also sounds quite difficult, right? You think like, oh, I'm never allowed to fly a plane again, or I need to find all these super expensive eco hotels. But I'm trying to show that it's not that difficult, not that expensive, and also just really fun to find sustainable options when traveling.
Yeah, definitely. I love how your tips are just really actionable. Like, there's so many big ideas to combat, like environmental issues in today's world, but it's overwhelming sometimes to think about like our small role in this huge problem. But you really include ways on your Instagram account, just like ways we as individuals can make a difference.
Yeah, of course, it's always good to mention that it's not only up to us as individuals to change these things, but especially also to like businesses and politics. I think it's a kind of triangle where everyone points at each other, and instead, I would like to say, let's all do what we can, even if it's small steps. And not wait for like politics to change or big businesses to change.
Yes, 100%. Like any small step in the right direction is still moving in the right direction.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so I read on your blog that you were born and raised in the Netherlands, where you're currently based. How did growing up there influence your values and your mindset on sustainability?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure how much the country kind of influenced that. I guess we just don't have a whole lot of nature in general. So the Netherlands is a very densely populated country, so lots of big cities, and I mean, there's definitely some pretty nature out there, but um, it's not as big as in other countries. There's not a lot of really wild places. So you've got to kind of leave the country to find those things for the most part. So I guess that influenced it a little bit. Is wanting there to be more real nature and not parks that are still being kind of changed by humans.
Mm. Okay, yeah, because I was just thinking, like, specifically Amsterdam, it's known for its incredible bike infrastructure as the main mode of transportation. So biking is obviously a very eco-friendly way to get from one place to another. So yeah, I was just curious, like, do you have any insight on making transportation more sustainable when we travel?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I think the Netherlands is indeed very tailored to cycling, but also walking. Yeah, that's a good point. So that definitely influenced how I travel. I got into road cycling, and then I went on a bikepacking trip. So it's like backpacking, but you're on a bike. And that was absolutely great because you get to see so much more from a country that I absolutely loved it. And now I just want to take my bike everywhere. But of course, like that's not for everyone. So of course, backpacking or trekking is also a really nice way to see a lot of the real country instead of just the tourist highlights. And if you want to travel longer distances, then trains are always good if they're running.
Yes, definitely. So I'm curious, you mentioned that the lack of nature, like growing up in your environment, made you realize the importance of wanting to spend more time in nature. So was there a particular place or like experience that really made you more interested in the topic of sustainability?
No, I think it was a very kind of smooth transition that I myself hardly noticed that I was, getting more into sustainability because it also coincided a little bit with me going first vegetarian and then vegan. So it's like affecting pretty much every aspect of my life. I also try to find the most sustainable clothing, which is what you already have in your closet. So I'm trying to also, shop secondhand and all of these things. But there wasn't one specific moment that changed my mindset. I think it grew over time. But there was one book that was a bit of an eye opener for me. It's a Dutch book. I'm not sure if there's a translation out yet, but it's talking about how are we going to explain all the things we do to detrimentally affect our planet. How are we going to explain this to the next generations? And the end of the book, yeah, it ended with a kind of call to action, saying, "Okay, don't wait sitting around for other people to change this, but yeah, do everything you can." And also in terms of politics, vote for a Green Party, all these kind of things. Um, and that's what I did.
Yeah, it's really amazing how much like a single book or like you said experience can really make you change your mind and make you have that drive to take action. And you bring up a significant principle that we should not only be sustainable like as travelers, which is what your Instagram page focuses on, but also in our daily lives. Um, you said that you're a vegan now.
Yeah, yeah.
How can we, I guess, for people who are interested in that lifestyle, but not yet completely vegan, how can we do that when we travel and like incorporate that slowly into our daily living? Because it's not the easiest, especially where I live in the United States. There's a growing movement, but it's still like our culture is still very much centered around animal products.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good question. The funny thing is, I used to have, or I mean, I still have, but I don't use it anymore. Also, a blog about vegan food, but there's a lot of those types of recipe blogs and stuff out there. So it's always a good idea to follow those, and especially ones that are focused on the area you're traveling to, because they will have like the local tips and stuff. But also, I swear by the app Happy Cow. It's awesome. It costs just a few euros if you download the app, but I think it's free if you use it on your laptop. And you basically can find vegan spots all over the place, and also um, restaurants that serve both meat and vegan options if you're traveling with people who do still want to eat meat. So it's super handy app for traveling.
Okay, I'll have to check that one out because I know it's always a struggle for me. Like, I guess my excuse that I use for not being like vegetarian is like when I travel, like I have to have a source of nutrients, and it's very difficult when you go to a restaurant and it's like there are no like plant-based options, so you're like kind of forced to eat the meat option. Um
Yeah, or
so
you'll have some sad salads.
yeah, exactly. I am totally for a plant-based diet. Like I definitely do agree that it's healthier for you and better for your body, like and for the environment. But it's just like I mentioned, our society is not conducive for it.
Yeah.
Um, what would you say to someone who's like feeling a bit overwhelmed by the changes they have to make to be more eco-conscious, like just against these huge environmental problems?
Yeah, I think it's good to realize that you on your own can never fix all of these problems. So you can do your best in your personal life. But also, nobody is perfect. I think perfectionism is the biggest trap in trying to live more sustainably. So really try to take small steps. For example, with going zero waste, don't try to do this in one go, but just simply phase out. So, for example, I did this with my bathroom. So, when I ran out of toothpaste, I got a zero waste alternative. When I ran out of shampoo, I got a zero waste alternative. And now my bathroom is pretty much zero waste, but my kitchen still isn't because it's really hard to find all your vegetables without plastic, for example. So some things are just not attainable in a specific region or a specific lifestyle, and that's okay. Um, so just pick the things that are easy for you to change, and then over time maybe try some harder sustainable challenges in that sense. But I think it's just if everyone changes their mindset and tries to be more sustainable, that will also have an influence on how corporations handle their business and the policy decisions that get made in politics. So I think it's more about making others aware and trying your best and not trying to solve everything on your own.
Yeah, and that's definitely what you're doing on your Instagram channels and your blog. So again, like amazing work that you're doing. I can't wait for more content that you put out. I know you said you have like a lot like coming up, so I'm excited for
Hmm.
that.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
What is one change we can make as travelers that you think is the most important to a future of sustainable travel?
I think it's to do with being aware of what spending money means. So that sounds maybe a bit cryptical, but I'll explain. Um, Money is kind of the biggest incentive in this way we've made our society. So if you say, "Oh, I'm against," for example, animal harm, but you buy meat, you're literally funding the animal harm. And it's the same with, for example, flying. If you buy a plane ticket, that's not only um, kind of a problematic in emissions, but also you're keeping this business going. So I would advise to think twice about what you spend your money on, and in that sense, what you're giving incentive to be produced more of by buying something. So yeah, it's not only about emissions, but it's also the kind of the industries that you fund with where you spend your money, and being
Yeah,
aware of that, I think, is already a good start to make better choices.
yes, 100%. In The Last Tourist, I think they mentioned that you vote with your dollars, and that's exactly what you're
Exactly.
saying,
Yeah.
that like you indirectly, like whether you know it or not, you're supporting whatever you spend money on, and if it's not something that aligns with your values, like you're still um I don't know, like motivating this business to keep going, and like you're basically telling the business to keep on producing whatever they're producing for you. So yeah, you bring up a super important point. As far as transportation, how can we, I guess, find alternatives to flying? Like how do you get from country to country when you go places?
Um, well, I think the biggest part there is accepting that there's also places you're not going to go to. So, for example, I would love to go to Thailand, for example. But for now, I'm just not planning on going there because there's so much to see in Europe still, that I first want to try and kind of tick off my bucket list of all the cool places in Europe. Even within the Netherlands, there's places that I haven't been to where I want to go. And that can be equally fun as going somewhere very far. So, yeah, the bottom line is maybe look closer to home. And of course, look into there's so many options like ferries, trains. Like I said, cycling, you can get pretty far if you train a little bit. But also things like hitchhiking can be an option for you. If you have an electric car and you want to do a road trip with a few friends, for example, there's so many options. It's just crossing oceans that's a little bit hard without flying.
So my next question is, if you could be president of the entire tourism industry for a day, what's the number one change you would make?
Oh, way more high speed trains. I think that would solve a lot of the transportation issues. But also, it's just easier for people who have family far away, for example. And now I think especially the travel time is what prohibits people from taking the train over flying. So I think that's an easy big win in a sense.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I wish we could enact that in the US. It's so funny because I volunteer now part-time in a hostel, and when I talk with other travelers about, how they plan their itinerary from going from state to state, they're like they're taking the Amtrak train, like going 22 hours from one state to the next, and I'm like, Americans just don't do that. Like, we either fly or we drive. Like, no one I
Yeah.
know takes the Amtrak, like the train system, from one system to the other. It's only from people out of the country. So, like, yeah, the US definitely needs a bigger train infrastructure, train culture.
Yeah, exactly. And the only way really to get that is by taking the train and incentivizing that and showing that there's demand for these trains. I think that's the easiest way to well, hopefully change the whole system.
Definitely. Okay, so are you ready for some rapid fire questions?
Okay, yeah.
What is your dream destination?
Oh, well, like I said, I think I want to go to Thailand someday, but I'll have to find a sustainable way to get there still.
Oh my gosh, yes, I would love to go to Thailand as well. And then what is your most memorable meal you've had when traveling?
Um, in Sweden, I went to this kind of vegan canteen. It was a super small restaurant run by two local ladies, and they had a kind of buffet. It was quite small, but they managed to get a lot of different things in, and it was just so nice that you can taste everything and fully
Sweet.
plant based. So that was good.
And then lastly, what is a special place in your heart?
Um, oh, there's so many special places. But I think for now I'll go for the cheesy answer and say the UK because that's where my boyfriend lives and where I've been traveling to quite a lot over the past 1.5 years or so. And I thought because I cycled through the UK before and I've been there with school a few times, I thought I kind of seen it all. But then he took me to some nature areas that were absolutely stunning. And now I find out there's so much more to see there. So I'm very excited to hopefully be moving there soon and yeah, going to all these pretty forests and hills and beaches. So for now, it'll be the UK.
All right, amazing. Yeah, there's so much to see in the UK besides just London. Like, it really is a beautiful country.
Yeah, there's so much more to it. I guess it's the same with most capital cities, that London isn't really a representation of the country as a whole.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for your time today, Lotta. Where can we connect with you?
Yeah, like I said, always feel free to go to my blog on Instagram, and you can always shoot me a DM or reach out via email. I would be super keen to hear also the tips that other people have, and yeah, work together on making the tourism industry more sustainable.
Yes, it definitely starts with each individual making small changes, like you said. So thank you so much for sharing, and I can't wait for your upcoming content.
Yeah, thank you so much, and it was lovely talking to you.
Thank you so much for being here and listening to this episode. If you can take 10 seconds out of your day, please spread the travel love by following this podcast and giving it a rating. Or if there's anyone else in your life that has a case of wanderlust, it would mean so much if you shared this episode with them. You can find me sharing even more travel-related content on Instagram at God of Case of Wanderlust and on my personal Instagram at Lydia Schultz, double Z. I also have a travel blog for my extra passionate travelers out there, which can be found at godofcaseofwanderlust.com. And all of this can be found in the show notes.